Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Frame by Frame, Voices of Cinema. I'm your host, Gerald Pagdato. Today, we're joined by Gilbert Allan, a director, producer, and actor with over 4 decades of experience in the performing arts. Gilbert's work spans independent films, theater, radio, commercials, music videos. Gilbert has been a pioneering force in Edmonton's film scene. His projects like Core Values and No Apologies reflect his dedication to impactful and thought-provoking cinema. In today's episode, we'll explore Gilbert's extensive career, his insights into the craft of filmmaking, and his thoughts on the future of independent cinema. So whether you're a seasoned filmmaker or a curious listener, this conversation promises to be both enlightening and inspiring. So sit back, relax, and join us as we go frame by frame with Gilbert Allan on Frame by Frame, Voices of Cinema. So Gilbert, thank you so much for joining us today in Frame by Frame. I'm so excited to sit here with you. And again, can't wait to hear your story. And I'm going to be asking you a bunch of questions. But again, totally grateful for you being here today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jer. And I think this will be fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Gilbert, I've known you for a while, but I don't really know the background about who Gil Allan is. Are you able to dive down, dig deeper on kind of your upbringing and you know, more about Gil Allan there?
Yeah, sure. You know, I come from pretty simple roots. I was born in Saskatchewan, didn't stay there very long, left as a child, as a toddler, I guess. My dad was pretty much a blue-collar guy, but he came from a pioneering background. I mean, literally was born in a log house with a wood floor. My mom was very much a cultured lady who was also born in Saskatchewan, but her parents were transplants from Europe and were, I guess you would call gentry. So she had a very classic upbringing, and the influence of the two had a big impact on me. It was I had a great childhood, and my mom got me involved as a toddler in performance work, paid performance. So I was a child performer, mostly musical stuff and things of that nature, which fell to the wayside. I embraced comedy and theater at a really young age. And so I grew up being in the arts. And I, you know, jokingly say that theater is my religion. You know?
Yeah.
And over time, I just see everything as a natural progression. I got involved with television, dabbled a bit with radio, and eventually that just kind of evolved into the film game. And before I ever directed a feature film, which my first one was 24 years ago, I had thousands of hours of work behind the camera.
I see.
With, you know, shorter formats. Yeah. So television and corporate video and that kind of thing. And I am one of the 80s video producer directors. So there was an entire genre that we were pioneering, because really there was no manual to follow. Yeah. And we were figuring it out. I mean, I like to say now we were just kids with cameras, you know?
At an early age, because of your upbringing there, your involvement in the performing arts really played a huge factor. Can you just go into more detail on how your involvement in the performing arts impacted your involvement into film and these other different areas of medium?
Good question, Jar. I almost don't know. Like, to me, being involved in the performance world is just a natural thing. It's like breathing, you know, and I've taught a lot of actors, and they'll say to me things like, well, how do you make yourself cry? I don't know. I just do. Yeah. I didn't really think about it at the time. You know, when you grow up doing something, you take a lot of things for granted. When I was a student at the U of A, what my professor would say, you're an intuitive director. Okay. And they say, you know what to do and you know what's right. Now our job is to teach you why you make the choices you make and explain the rules to you. But somehow through osmosis, I picked up a lot of things that just became like a second nature. So I've had people say, oh, you're a natural. Am I? Or was I just exposed and somehow in a symbiotic kind of relationship with other creatives around me, absorbed that information? You know, I haven't really analyzed it. But it was an interesting balance because my dad was the kind of guy that says, well, you got to be prepared to have a backup. There was never a discussion on you're going to have a career in creative. Yeah. It was you're going to have to do something else with your life, and the creative is a sideline, or it's just going to fall to the wayside. Yeah. So, you know, I deal with a lot of young people in this game, and they are having a life plan. I never had a life plan. I never had a career plan. It just happened.
So let me just touch on that. And just to clarify for the listeners and the viewers, did you have any formal training or education in film school or?
In film school?
Yeah.
No, but I have a degree from the U of A.
Gotcha.
But my degree is actually in education. What they did back then was a thing called a drama specialist. So my focus was theater, and in the context of teaching drama in schools, and I think by the time we graduated, their conclusion was we were qualified to teach people to be drama teachers or to teach people to be professional actors, which essentially meant that they had trained us to replace all of our professors.
Kind of train the trainer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something that I'm also curious to dive deeper into is this lifeline, not lifeline. How did you word it? Almost like a life plan, or for these people currently in the industry, people kind of getting into the industry. Can you dive into kind of what you mean by that and what does that entail?
You know, the sooner you get into a profession, the easier it is for you because you have more time to learn things. Yeah. And now a lot of people map out their future, you know, with I'm going to take high school drama, then I'm going to go to Grant McEwen, say, and I'm going to study musical theater, or I'm going to go, and then from there I'm going to go to the Vancouver Film School. Yeah. I had no plan. You know, I was just having a good time, living my life, growing, and I also the era was such that there was a shortage of performers, local performers. There was a shortage of local production people. So the opportunities were plentiful. You know, today, nobody quits a job in a theater because they're so hard to get. Well, in our day, they were begging people to, you know, come and try this. So carpenters that were building houses were enticed into, come be a stage carpenter. I mean, I worked with folks at CTV. One of my lighting guys was had started at CTV in Edmonton when he was 19 as a temp job. And so he hired on as a stagehand, and he spent literally the rest of his life there, you know, because he just kept learning more and more and more. And they were, you know, that was a time when they were looking for people. Yeah. And now it's kind of the opposite. We've got more people training, and so it's much more competitive. You know, and I think I don't know why I've been so blessed in this life to have the opportunities that I've gotten, but I did not have the mountains to climb that some young people would have today in 2024.
And that kind of leads me, I guess, into my next question, because you bring up a good point. And, you know, nothing ever goes according to plan, but it's always good to have a plan. You being involved in the industry over 4 decades, how has the industry changed over those 4 decades? And what are the just basically, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the industry?
There's always change in the arts.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't matter which art you're talking about, whether it's sculpting or fine art, dance, juggling, there's always a change. There's always an evolution. The difference I see right now in the last, I'm going to say 4 years since the start of the pandemic, is the world is undergoing a paradigm shift. There's big cultural changes, probably like during the time of the Industrial Revolution, but even more so. I mean, we came out of an industrialized complex into the information age. So there's this giant paradigm shift that's happening all over the world. We're going through another period of a lot of political upheaval, social upheaval, but it has particularly impacted the arts world. And the most glaring of it is in the film and television industry, where a whole technology, a whole different way of exhibiting the content that we create has evolved that we've never dealt with before. And I'm talking about streaming and the internet, right? I mean, for over 100 years, the number one form of visual entertainment was the feature film as shown in a cinema. And I read somewhere now it's like the 8th highest.
Oh, really? That much of a difference now,
That much of a difference.
Yeah.
And that's got to do with the shift, not even so much what the creators are doing, but the shift in what the public is doing. Okay, the audience is doing. And so, there's massive change. I mean, the number one visual form of entertainment now is interactive video games.
Yeah.
Number 2 is TikTok.
Is it really?
Yeah. Like TikTok has just drawn all the eyeballs. And apparently now even TikTok is starting to fade because the young people are going, well, my grandma's now on TikTok. Right? And as soon as that happens, the young people want to abandon because young people want to find new territory, right? So this is an exciting time for independent filmmakers because they're always the first people to go into the unstructured world and look for new avenues of exhibition. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, when the whole concept of streaming came on board, and maybe people have already forgotten this, but it was almost 100% independent film that was on the streaming services. Now the big studios like from Hollywood and such have embraced it and have absorbed it and kind of, pushed the independence to the back corner.
Yeah.
But it's always the indie filmmakers who are looking for new and innovative ways to do things and to exhibit things. So it's a colossal.
So right now
change.
It's kind of like the wild, wild west.
Oh, it's
right.
It's the wild, wild west. All right. Yeah. It is a whole different world. And the problem with that is it doesn't just, it's not always a positive opportunity because whenever you change something else has to diminish or alter itself in some way.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you equate it to this, you can be the best saddle maker in the country, but now automobiles are being sold. So what does your future look like as the best saddle maker? What does your future look like? So you may, and I mean, today we still have saddle makers. You can still get a custom made, high-end saddle. Yeah. But automobile, and now we're even talking that maybe automobiles are on the way out, or they're certainly going through a paradigm shift with technology. Well, that happens to film too.
So I'm kind of curious because, like with this paradigm shift, do you suggest, for directors or producers to be, I guess, constantly evolving or looking for other mediums to present their work? Or should they just stick to what's kind of true, tried, and proven?
Adapt or die.
Yeah.
And that's the way the industry has always been,
Yeah.
Daryl Zanuck, great golden years Hollywood film director, said, television? This isn't going to last. I mean, how would you expect people to sit in their living room with a plywood box and stare at that all the time? Nah, television is a flash in the pan. Well, Daryl was a great filmmaker, but he couldn't see the handwriting on the wall. And so the people who can see the future are the people who are going to not only survive, but thrive. And the people stuck in the past are eventually going to diminish. I've said it a number of times. The best thing ever to happen to the consumer was streaming. The worst thing ever to happen to producers, creators, and the industry itself is streaming.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back to, let's say, the 1960s. If it was an important film, it went to every city in the world eventually.
Yeah.
And everybody saw that film, and we had a global, sometimes global, shared experience and consciousness because of that film. Well, today, there's so many avenues of exhibition that even finding your audience is way more difficult.
Yeah.
But you have access to it. So it's this weird catch-22, and we don't know. As they say, cream always rises to the surface. So the best things will stay, and the rest will sink. So right now in the Wild West, who knows how it's going to turn out?
Oh, that's kind of a deep one there, and I'm thinking about all the streaming companies out there: Disney, Hulu, Netflix. Like, the trend and just the news articles I've been reading are, they're investing a lot less into original films. They've cut out, just recently over the last month, they've laid off thousands of people in their departments. And so I guess my question to you is kind of, is the writing on the wall for these streaming companies? They're obviously doing these and taking these actions for some kind of reason, but I'm trying to figure out what that reason is.
It is to control exhibition. I mean, if you're dependent on someone else, for decades, for at least 70 years, the Hollywood studios controlled the cinemas. Okay, they controlled any of the big cinemas, whether it was AMC and Hawkins, or in Canada, Cineplex and Landmark. And they still exact that control today, where they have a lot of clout, where they go, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to show it, and so on. And if you can control that, then you control what's in the marketplace. What streaming does is take away control from the studios or the most powerful creators and shares it with everybody. But the internet itself has even opened that up farther.
Yeah.
So that and also the things that people are interested in seeing. I was just reading this morning about how, they're really looking hard at this, but the youngest people, the youngest consumers in our society are not interested in a feature-length film, and they're not interested in a television series. They're interested in things that are much shorter length and that kind of thing. So it's not impossible to say that a 90-minute movie will cease to exist.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, before the pandemic hit, it was the boomers that were keeping the cinema doors open. They were regular, habitual goers.
Yeah.
And so as long as they were there, the doors were open. And from that point, then the marketing people would try and attract the younger generations.
Yeah.
Well, COVID hit and we retrained the boomers into thinking, well, I don't have to go. I can sit in my house with my 75-inch smart TV and my cheap surround sound system and my recliners. And this is pretty cushy. And I can pause and I can, and if I want to start a movie at 2 a.m., I can do that. And the return to cinema hasn't happened.
It still hasn't, hey?
It's not, we're not back to pre-COVID numbers.
Yeah.
So
kind of, what's that percentage difference? Do you know, or just roughly?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Yeah, hey?
But it has come back for very specific things. Top Gun Maverick, Barbie, Oppenheimer, The Fall Guy. You know, it's got a few of these things, but run-of-the-mill or average films that are in cinemas are really hurting because people just go, I'll wait for it to come on streaming.
Yeah, hey?
You know, I think the biggest eye-opener for me was what happened with Kevin Costner's Horizon. I mean, he's created he was on the path of creating what would be a phenomenal cinematic achievement. He's telling a 12-hour story in 4 parts that you could only see in the cinema, and you should because it's designed for a 50-foot screen. And he released in July episode 1, which is clearly the first chapter in the 4-part series. And the public didn't embrace. The media turned against him. Critics turned against him. And the public went, yeah, we'll wait for it to come on streaming. Well, it may not come on streaming. You know, it has, the first episode has, but you may not get the entire story.
Yeah.
They pulled the release for August for part 2 out of the cinemas. They were in production with part 3, which I don't know if they've completed. So we may not get part 4, the conclusion. You know what I mean? And so I looked at that and went, man, like that was a guaranteed winner.
Yeah.
That was, you know, he's creating a phenomenon and he's got the track record. There's no reason that this shouldn't have blown the doors off of Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
And yet everybody basically went, we'll wait.
So really the mind shift and mentality and I guess evolution of how people want to consume media has changed a lot.
Studies have shown that like young people are content to watch very serious films on their telephone. You know, Gen X and boomers.
Yeah.
No way, man. I got to have that big experience.
Yeah.
You know, and comedies require an audience. The real joy of a comedy is being in a room full of people who are laughing with you at the antics that you see on screen or in person.
Yeah.
You know, comedies are not as much fun when you're alone in your apartment.
Yeah.
So that collective thing, it will be a genuine shame if we lose the collective experience.
So you mentioned something earlier and you used the terminology pendulum shift. Do you think that, you know, the way it's going right now with the viewers and just kind of how their mentality is and their, I guess, habitual habits, do you think that's ever going to go back, or it will? Do you predict that it's just going to shift again back to how it was?
Radio died in the 1990s. Radio's dead. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore, right?
I still listen to radio.
Okay. But I was there for radio's death. It still exists. I mean, because radio at one time was the number one force of communication in the world.
Yeah.
But radio still exists. It evolved. It changed. It treated itself differently. It has become a new animal. Steven Spielberg talked about exclusivity. And by that, he was saying he could see a day where a filmmaker would make a film and release it into specific locations, much like a Broadway stage play, and sell exclusive tickets at, say, $150 a pop, and leave it in these cinemas for a year, and then destroy the film. I mean, there is only a certain number of people on this planet who have seen the original Cats with the original cast on Broadway. They're the only people in the world. No matter what happens now, nobody can have that experience.
Yeah.
Cinema could go that way. And it may not, you know, we may see a time where certain filmmakers will go, I'm going to create an experience for the elite, or for those, and the elite will be those people who choose to participate, not necessarily the most financially capable people. And so we may see things like that occur, you know, because we've got the opposite end going on. I can make a movie on my phone and share it on my phone, and other people can watch it on their phone. That exists. So what if you create a piece of work that will only be shown on a 50-foot screen in a very nice theater with a group of people who are also exclusive in that they purchased $150 tickets. And then you also know that one day that film is going to be destroyed. No copies. So we could see that kind of a thing happen. Man, if I had a crystal ball, I could tell you what's going to happen. I still, and like most people, when COVID happened, I broke my habits of going to the cinema, which was a minimum of once a week, to now I'm pretty selective at what I choose to go and see.
Yeah.
You know, and some of that's an economic decision. I mean, for my wife and I to go to the cinema, that's $60.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought about Costner's Horizon. That's a $240 expense to get his 12-hour story. So there are people who are saying, economically, that's not a good use of my money. You know, so we may see, you know, more decisions based on that.
That's a good point, especially from the economical standpoint. Your experience in theater and radio definitely, obviously, and you mentioned it earlier, did shape kind of how you view your work now. I guess, how has your work in theater and radio affected your storytelling? Or has it modified or changed the way you tell stories?
It emphasized something that Francis Ford Coppola has said before.
Yeah.
It's the writing and the acting. Okay. If you've got a great script and you've got amazing actors, then you've got something that has the potential to be very appealing to an audience.
Yeah.
A hit, if you will. If you've got great cinematography and great music and great art direction, you may create a very pretty train wreck. If it has a horrible script with really bad acting, all the other tech elements don't
matter.
They matter because they make things beautiful, but you're probably not going to appeal to the audience. The audience needs a great story, and they need great actors to tell that story. And as a filmmaker, you hope you get it all. You hope you get a great script and you get fantastic actors and you have the best cinematographer and the best composer and the best art direction, and everything goes your way, and then you make something that's truly magical and genius.
So when deciding to direct a film or indie film or a feature, I guess, what do you look for in the script that basically say, hey, this is a no-brainer? And just from the script wise first, I know.
Head and heart.
Head and heart.
Okay. Does it make sense to me intellectually, scholastically? Is this a good story? Is this something that is appealing to me? And is there a human connection? Is there some emotion there that I can identify with? it can't be all head, because then you might as well just be doing a documentary. There's got to be some emotional pull there. And it's got to be exciting. We all identify with character arcs. That's why you writers have to build a character arc into every script for at least minimal the protagonist. And the arc has got to be they change. Mm-hmm. Something occurs that causes them to change. And so I look for that. And I lean towards mostly social drama, and have for the last couple decades, that human thing we can all identify with.
Yeah.
When I tell my students, the Whale Rider, which was a New Zealand film about a young teenage girl who is in their culture, the most important religious person, is capable of standing on the back of a whale and riding the whale. And her grandfather was a whale rider, and he's the big elder in the village. And she's got the gift. But he's like, no, you can't. This is for boys. This is for men. And he finally, but that's her calling. She is a spiritual person and a whale rider and so on. So there's this great universal story that we all experience, where the older generations have to give way to the incoming younger generation. And, so it's that great human interest, personal, universal type story that we can all identify with.
So when directing or producing a film, you obviously need a good team. And it's a lot of people say it's a collaborative effort. In your experience, what makes a good team, and how do you get them to gel together and work towards a common goal of the film?
It's a collaborative experience in a hierarchical tyranny. Okay, so that's a very tricky combination. It is, the film industry is set up almost like the military, or the industrial complex, where you've got the big boss, almost the big boss, a fairly big boss, all the way down. Yeah, you've got that hierarchy, and it doesn't matter what the workers think if the big boss thinks a different way, So you've got that structure, and then somehow people have to buy into the vision of what's happening and collaborate. There's a thing in live theater that we talk about called the director as God scenario. And the Reader's Digest version of that is the emissary of God delivering his message to the planet through theater is that the director is the voice of God. Okay, or has the vision and insight into God. So everybody's job is to get what the director wants, but also improve on it at the same time. And so you've got to have people that share in the director's vision, that can understand the director's vision, even if the director doesn't share it properly, and somehow says, okay, I know what we're trying to do, and I've got to bring that to the table. Sometimes I think that's just dumb luck, that we meet the right people and they go, and everybody clicks and everybody gels, R.V. Laimatinen, may he rest in peace, who was one of the most prolific producers in Edmonton, said to me, when working on a feature film, you're building a cathedral one brick at a time. And the only people you want there are the people who understand those bricks and how to lay them according to your vision. If they can't do that, they have to go. And I took that to heart, and I've really paid attention to that. And it's the people who come every day and go, yes, we're doing something so important, and I'm going to build this cathedral one brick at a time until we have it.
Have you worked on any of these projects that have just not clicked? And, kind of what was the end result, or I guess what steps did you take to kind of correct that?
I mean, I've been on projects that were not necessarily mine,
Yeah.
but I've been employed to be on these projects, and I've seen things be incredibly challenging to the point of being disastrous. And the end product is mediocre at best. And it almost always boils, not almost always, I guarantee every single time it boils down to personalities involved. A tyrannical boss or somebody that can affect the outcome of things, that puts people at odds with each other. That old saying, if you're divided, we'll fall, it truly applies. If everybody's cohesive and everybody cares about everybody and they care about the project, then you've got a real shot at making something good. When you have people that are at loggerheads, I've literally been on a set where departments were not talking to each other. Okay. And people were in tears.
Jeez.
And the workday doesn't get done. And they start cutting things from the shot list and cut it. And so you just know that when you get it into post, you don't have everything you're going to need. And so it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
Now, you can always make something out of something, right? So as long as you can get 90% of the way through, they'll come out with a product, and it might even be a sellable product. But is it a great product? Probably not.
I guess if you had to give advice to someone that's in that situation, what would it be? Or what would there be key takeaways?
It would depend somewhat on where you are in the process.
Yeah.
If it's early on, get out. End this misery before it. There's no point going through this misery. Get out, start over, get new people.
Yeah.
And if you're in too deep to get out, then you just, it's like being on a runaway train. You just hang on and hope for the best.
So I guess that brings into my next question, which is kind of related to just what you were talking about is, your experience in theater and acting, has having that knowledge and that experience in acting from an acting role, how has that, kind of changed or modified the way you direct as well? Because you know what to look for because you've been acting, right? So when you're directing a scene, I guess, and when it's, time to give direction to actors, how has your acting experience kind of, changed the way you directed? Or has it? Or what comes first,
Most certainly. It's kind of a two-brain thing. As a director, you're the visionary of the project.
Yeah.
And some directors take that way too much to heart and they become a tyrant king or a puppet master. And so as a human being, you're wrestling with that. At what point do I have to relax and let other people breathe?
Yeah.
You're the boss and you're dictating everything to everybody, right? Yeah. As an actor, and as, how it's influenced me is as a director, I think, well, as an actor, I want as much freedom as I can get. And I also think, why are you hiring talented, creative people if you're not going to let them do their thing? So my vision for directing is to have a servant's heart. I'm there for the actors because they're the faces that the public's going to see, whether it's on a screen or on a stage, doesn't matter. Those are the ones that are telling the story. Those are the ones that the audience is really going to connect with, not me, because I'll be somewhere else. I'll be in the dark somewhere, right? So you want to empower them as much as possible. And I talk to my actors about this and I say, I'm going to tell you what to do, but this is where we had the exchange. My job is to be a mirror. I'm going to reflect back to you what the audience is seeing. And I'm going to be honest with you depending on your level of tolerance.
Yeah.
So I'll say, that was terrible, if you can tolerate that kind of a statement. That was terrible. Here's what I think you should try next. Now let's try that and see if it works, right? So I'm there to serve them because I've never met an actor who said, look, I want to look bad. I want to stink. I've never met that actor. They all want to do a great job, and they all want to look fabulous and be amazing. So once you have a level of trust with them, then they start to count on your voice. And, and there's been times when actors, when you're acting, sometimes you'll do a performance, especially for camera, and it looks great and it sounds great and everything is great. And the actor goes, can we do that again? Well, it's because inside it feels bad to them, but they can't see it and they can't hear it.
Yeah.
And so you got to go, trust me, man, that was great. And if we've got time, I will often say, sure, let's do it again.
Yeah.
And still use the take that I think was great, which is also out of the control of the actor.
Yeah.
But it's also knowing what they go through, understanding the process that an actor goes through, the mental process, the physical process, and so on. There are people who direct films that have never acted. And I think, how can you do that? Like they'll come up through another department. Yeah. Or they'll take a different path to get there. And how can you do that? You don't know what the actor's going through. You don't feel it, and you have no concept. And I've seen some of those directors, and they'll get very frustrated when they don't get what they want, but then they also don't know how to tell the actor what they want. Yeah. Because they don't know the language of the actor.
So I guess what's your approach on casting and finding that right person for the role?
When I read a script, I start seeing people in it. Sometimes they're humans I know, actors. I go, ooh, this is right for Jer. He'd be a great murderer. He's wonderful here.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's Hollywood studio actors that you go, oh, Angelina Jolie would be perfect. Even though I know full well I'm not going to get Angelina Jolie because we can't afford her. But then that gives you a kind of a bias, right? And then sometimes I see people that don't exist. I don't have a local actor. I don't have a Hollywood star that jumps to mind. I just see them in my imagination. Yeah. And so then, and sometimes that's better because since I built the human being, I can adjust that human being to be more open to who walks in the door. And sometimes you just get surprised. Yeah. When we were doing Core Values, the newspaper editor was a guy named Ronald, was the character's name. And when I read it, the image that came to mind was J. Jonah Jameson from the old Spider-Man animated series. Yeah. And ironically, everybody else that read it saw the same thing. We were all like, that's J. Jonah Jameson. And when I was working with our casting people for that, I said, Erica Eleniak. They were like, what? Erica Eleniak? And they're like, Erica Eleniak, like from Baywatch, jumping out of the cake in Under Siege? That Erica Eleniak? And I went, yeah, because she's not that person anymore. She's at the time we did Core Values, she was 48, completely changed, evolved, whatever. I said, I looked at the qualities of the editor, tough but firm, with a bit of a nurturing spirit. And I said, and my personal experience is I've seen a lot of women bosses that would follow that description. Well, it took some doing, but we got Erica Eleniak. And people are like, you're nuts. Why would you? That doesn't know. It's J. Jonah Jameson. It's got to be a guy with a mustache and a crew cut. And I was like, no. I just had this thought, and it worked. It was once everybody saw the performance, they all went, "Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's what I saw all along." Yeah, because it just gelled that way. Did that a couple of times on that film where I cast against the obvious. And but then that's also part of your personal experience. So, you know, casting for indie film, there's so many factors to it. Sometimes there's what we call political casting. And that's when somebody's financing a big chunk of the movie and they say, I will give you this check, but my granddaughter's got to play a role.
Yeah, I see.
Okay?
Yeah.
Or we're giving you this pizza location to use for 2 weeks. So my cook always wanted to be a movie star, so you've got to use my cook. And so now you're trying to do that. So that kind of thing happens, or, you know, whatever. There's...
Yeah, no, fair enough.
You know?
So I guess just to summarize, then it's not hit or miss, but you have depending on the role and depending on the script, you have a visual in your mind already. Maybe it's some previous actors or actresses that you worked with in the past that, you know, this role might be good for. Or sometimes just based on the script, you envision somebody in your mind to play this role. You know, they might have certain attributes, this tall, blonde hair, whatever it is. But when it comes down to the actor coming down and trying out for the role, sometimes what you envision in your head often morphs or changes.
Oh, it has to.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the thing about, I was going to say low budget indie film is it's all about compromise to your artistic vision. But if George Lucas was sitting in the chair, he would say it's all about compromise. He would say the same thing, regardless of the size of his budget, because he's talked about how much he compromised on Star Wars. So that's the thing, you know, like I said, I envision Angelina Jolie, but I get Peggy Sue Johnson from Entwistle because she's the closest thing, right? Or she does enough to impress you, you know? And so then you go with what you got. Sometimes you get fooled too, you know, the audition process, and people don't realize it. The audition process is really difficult for the actor. Okay. But it's just as difficult for the people on the other side of the desk. They're trying to figure out if a total stranger is going to make or break a role. And sometimes you get fooled. Somebody auditions and you go, yeah, okay, let's go with him. And then you get them on set and it's like, oh, what were we thinking?
No, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
And you're just like, yeah, pull the audition notes up because this can't be the same person. You know, I've been there, right? And you just go, wow, how did they get by?
Well, what do you think, I guess, plays into that factor of them killing it during casting and auditions, and then just bombing it, I guess, during production?
Some people just audition really well, and some people just are gregarious and walk into the room and are great, right? I used to audition fairly well. I've taught people to audition, and they have been quite successful. I can't audition with a hoot now because I know too much. And I fell asleep at an audition once.
Did you really?
I did. They had to wake me up and go, it's your turn. I'm, oh, yeah, okay, here we go. Most of my work as an adult came from people who knew me. And I've talked to directors about that, and they've said, yeah, your audition was like lame. I said, well, then why did you cast me? Oh, well, I saw you in such and such, and I knew you'd be perfect. Oh, okay, so good. So I think actors, one of the things I've noted with the young actors, they don't invite directors and producers to see their work as much as we used to when I was a young actor. You know, like if there was a director you were trying to, you know, get cast by, you'd always send him a couple of tickets to a show, you know, with a nice note saying, I'll buy you a cup of coffee, come see my show, tell me, I want to get notes from you, whatever. But it was to impress them. And I see that happening less and less. But as somebody who's gotten work from people who, and these days I don't chase the rainbow. I don't even audition. I don't submit headshots. I don't do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
But I will get calls from people who are producing and directing now that have been on crews of mine in the past, and they'll say, "Hey, Gil, I'm doing a thing. Could you come and do 2 or 3 scenes for me? I need a," "Yeah, you need a cranky old guy. I get it. I'm on my way. What do you want?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I get all the acting work that I want, because I want very little of it.
Yeah.
But, and I don't mean that in a boastful sense. It's just finding somebody that looks like me in my age group and all that. We're a little more rare, you know?
So you mentioned that, you know, it's, I guess during these times, it's less and less, you know, people reaching out to individuals, because really a lot of it's also word of mouth and your network, right? So I guess, do you suggest for individuals to show their work via demo reel, or like physical, or
demo reel, physical, any way you can? There's an old Hollywood expression. There's more casting done at a cocktail party than at an audition. Okay. People want to work with people they like. People want to work with people that they can connect with, that they have a pathos for. And, you know, the whole audition process is so artificial, and it is brutal on everybody.
Yeah.
I have never come out of an audition session rested. They're always exhaustive, you know, and it comes with the territory. But maybe it should be that way, because you're really trying to figure out in a matter of minutes, is this person somebody I can live with for 6 weeks?
Yeah.
You know, and so on.
What are other ways do you suggest for other people to just, you know, especially if someone's just starting out, they don't really know where to start? Where should they start? School,
education. I'm not saying everybody has to go to UCLA and get a degree in acting from them, but some kind of training. Too many people think that they can just start cold, learn on the job, but there's always courses. You know, I mean, if they're really young, then they should do it in school. You know, let the taxpayers pay for that route, and enroll in the drama programs and find out if you really want to do this.
Yeah.
That's one. Community theater. Places like FAVA, Film and Video Arts Alberta. They get on volunteer lists, or volunteer to act if acting's your thing. But you've got to build up who you are, and you got to build up your knowledge base. You know?
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer in education. I'm not necessarily a huge believer that everybody's got to go and get a degree, you know, but you've got to get some training. And when you're doing that, now you're comparing notes with people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
And say, "Oh, you heard about an audition? Or what about working with this director? Or so-and-so's got a project." And now that's where your network starts. So if you're starting cold, don't try to do it cold. Start your network by educating. And for actors that have been around a while, when we're going through periods of drought, when there's not enough work, those actors need to do weekend courses, you know, just to get with fellow actors for all the same reasons. Also to keep the sword sharp. If you're not using it, you lose it.
You've been around for the last, you know, directing the last over 4 decades now. And it sounds like a lot of people have looked up to you, and, you know, you're kind of a role model for a lot of individuals, especially people you've worked with in the past. How important do you think mentorship is, especially in this kind of industry? And how do you stay motivated as someone who wants to pursue filmmaking as a career?
Oh, I'm a huge believer in mentors. One of the I had some good mentors. Sometimes they didn't know they were my mentor even. because we didn't formalize it.
Yeah.
But it would be, hey, Jer, I got a question. Right? And Jer's kindly and says, oh, well, let me tell you what I think about that. My definition of a great mentor is not somebody who tells you what to do and how to do it. It's somebody who makes you question all your decisions. Okay?
Yeah.
And so when you say, I think my main character should do such and such. Okay, but have you thought about this and this and this? I'm not telling you what to do, but have you thought about those things? Mm-hmm. Now you go and you sleep on that and you mull that over and you come back and you go, I've decided my character's going to do this. Okay. And that's when the mentor's got to be supportive, say, good idea. And if anything goes wrong, here's a couple of suggestions,
Yeah.
You should be encouraging and suggesting, not dictating. And that's one way to tell a good mentor from a bad mentor.
What are your thoughts on the representation of independent filmmakers when it comes to mainstream media?
The impression they give is that independent filmmakers are quite often these bohemian, hippie ne'er-do-wells that are too artsy for their own good and aren't making a meaningful contribution to the commercial world of film. Spot on. Sure. You can find that individual. You're going to find everybody across the spectrum connected to independent film.
Yeah.
Let's think about the word indie. All it really means is it was not done by a major studio or any studio. It's an independent from the studio system filmmaker. Well, all the studios started off as independent filmmakers. And the studio is strictly a financial arrangement. So a filmmaker is basically a filmmaker. There's going to be good ones, bad ones, lousy ones, cheap ones, expensive ones, clever ones.
So really, it's just the nature of the business, right? And I don't know, does that have to really be the nature of the business? Like, do you see it evolving? Do you see it changing? Do you see a shift like you kind of talked about previously? Is the attitude towards indie filmmaking changing?
I think so. I think the audience is broadening. Indie used to, for most people, indie used to mean lousy, not good, not quality. And I think more people are waking up to the fact that it's interesting, it's different, it's not run of the mill. And we could get into a whole philosophical debate on what happened in Hollywood and how, the accountants took over and now they're just grinding out the factory stuff.
Yeah.
And it's become boring. And so people are looking for alternatives. Well, if TikTok is the number 2 form of visual entertainment, that tells me something. That tells me that people are going, I want to see something different. I don't want the pulp that's being, ground out for my consumption. I want something a little bit different.
Yeah.
As a consumer myself, I watch stuff from Scandinavia, from Iceland, from Australia, from Brazil. I'll look at things, I followed a series from South Africa. I had no idea. I learned a lot about South Africa doing this just because of following this one fictional narrative. So it's keeping an open mind. And I think audiences are starting to do that. Some of the biggest hits on the streamers have no one in them. And by no one, I mean the Hollywood star system celebrities that we've all come to know, the household names, the Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Goslings, and Squid Game came from Korea.
Yeah.
OA, I don't even know where OA came from, England, I think. But no, I think it was a New York thing. But there was no names attached that would normally draw you to it. And that was kind of a surprise. But so I think we're all of us are broadening our horizons a little more.
What are your thoughts on the rise of AI and how that might affect the way filmmaking is or is going, trending towards? Do you think it's gonna, make a huge impact moving forward here?
A friend of mine said, the internet is the absolute best of mankind and the absolute worst of mankind on the same platform. Kind of a yin-yang thing of humanity. AI scares me because I've already seen some things and I realized there are some advantages to it, but it's a deadly dangerous thing. You're really playing with fire, or you're really playing with the nuclear button. It could be so destructive and so damaging. And I don't mean just for the industry and finances. I mean, you could take any human being and have them say or do anything in a video that you want. And I've already seen that proven. So I'm 100% convinced of the danger of this device. On the other hand, we may never kill a stuntman again.
Yeah.
Because stunt people have sadly, tragically passed away because of doing dangerous stunts. And that may never happen if you've got AI. So, for every positive, there's a negative.
Yeah.
It worries me because I am about the human spirit and the human condition.
Yeah.
We could eliminate humans from the entire film process. We already know we no longer need writers. We don't need actors. We don't, and I see the attraction. You've got a $1.5 million Top Gun Maverick out there, and it cost $300 million to make, and it was dangerous.
Yeah.
It was really, there was a lot of serious danger involved in it, and it was a difficult process. Now I sit down to you as a studio head and I say, I can give you a $1.5 billion movie with a younger, taller, better looking Tom Cruise and even crazier stunts, and I can deliver the whole thing for $1 million, because all it's going to take is me and my two buddies and our computers, and we're just going to sit down and type away.
Yeah.
That's pretty attractive to you.
From a cost perspective and efficiency, even safety as well too, right? At the end of the day, their bottom line. But I don't know. It's hard to predict where it's going to go. I think it's going to be inevitable. I mean, you're already seeing it across, a bunch of animated projects, right?
Oh, the genie's out of the bottle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The genie's out of the bottle. It's really a question of, does the public accept it? And I have had this conversation with other filmmakers, and I go, look, Joe Lunchbox comes home from a hard day's work. He wants to eat his meal. He wants to put his feet up, turn on the TV, and watch John Wick wipe out 30 people and not even get his jacket ripped. And then he wants to go to bed, start the day over tomorrow, right? Yeah. He doesn't really care that Keanu Reeves has a job or not, because that's what he wants. He's getting fed. His needs are being met, right?
Yeah.
I want to know about Keanu. I want to see the human condition.
Yeah.
When AI can deliver genuine human emotion, the world's going to change.
Yeah. Just a matter of time, right?
I've seen some stuff from news anchors in Japan.
Yeah. Unreal.
If I had quit watching the video clip earlier, I would have never known they weren't AI.
Wow.
It was only the end that told me. And then I saw a thing about, young people in the United States, a lot of them are not getting enough food. They have a nutrition inefficiency.
Okay.
Or insufficiency. And so this young gal, probably age 12 to 14, is telling you about it. And then at the end, she says, and I am a composite of 7 of those real children.
What?
She was AI. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was real person.
Wow.
But she was made from 7 of these young people.
That's crazy.
But I was hook, line, and sinker in this PSA about how bad the food, not all kids can't eat.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind.
That is pretty crazy because you're engrossed in the story that they're telling, right? So you're not really, I guess, as you were watching, you're not really paying attention because your mind is already on the issue. So visually, it was really hard to tell if it was AI. Like when you were watching it, you didn't notice anything strange. Were the lips in sync with the audio? They were, just impeccable.
She was an adorable young girl.
Yeah.
And you just like, oh, I feel so bad. Oh, I feel so bad. Hope you're not one of them.
Yeah.
And then she goes, well, actually, I'm 7 of them.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, man. First of all, why should I care? You're a robot.
Yeah.
And then the other hand, but wait a minute, you're also 7 of these kids that need my help.
Yeah.
So there's an emotional head twist.
Yeah.
Where we're going to see AI, in my opinion, find its acceptance by the public is through advertising.
Advertising.
Okay?
Yeah.
Advertising, children's shows. They're not going to hit us with Top Gun Maverick or Oppenheimer. That'll come later.
Yeah.
We'll get used to it through small things. And I mean, we're totally used to the fact, here's a generational difference. When I was a kid, the animations were cartoons.
Yeah.
They were basic cartoons. And there was tons of live action programming for kids. There's almost no live action programming for kids now. It's all animation, high-end animation, Pixar level animation, right?
Yeah.
Who's the easiest to make comfortable with AI is going to be the children because they're already used to seeing this and they've been seeing it for 2 generations now. Right? So they're, and they're going to be the easiest ones to, they'll accept it. They'll get used to it.
So basically we're conditioning the younger generation because in 5-10 years from now, the older generation's going to move on, pass away or whatever. But these kids growing up in the age of AI won't even know anything else.
Right. This whole colored motion picture thing is just a passing fad. Movies that have sound, passing fad. No one's going to accept that. That's not real art. Right?
Yeah. No, it's
CinemaScope. Gimmick. Gimmick. Right?
Yeah.
Every time we get a new piece of tech, people will go.
Yeah.
AI is here. Now, it's what we do with it. It's how do we control it? How do we stop it from taking jobs away from people?
Yeah.
When I first started making commercials, it took 11 people on a crew. Okay. Yeah, I'm from the Stone Age. It took 11 people. Today, you can do with your phone what we could do with 11 people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
So tech,
yeah,
we are living in the age of, well, they call it the information age, but it's really the tech age. And it's constantly changing our world. So, yeah, I have huge concerns about AI, but I'm also not running screaming because you can't.
Yeah.
Some people are running and screaming, but somehow we've got to get a handle on it or find a comfort zone with it.
Yeah.
Or the right legislation that protects humans.
And I think that's going to be an important factor because it's still up in the air, especially intellectual property, right? And the algorithm used to train these AIs. But again, that's a different topic, and that's a huge topic to dig into.
Now, I'm going to share a thing that might not be 100% true because I don't know.
Yeah.
But I read about 2 researchers dealing with robots.
Okay.
And they were AI robots who were actually teaching each other. And so they posed a question to these 2 AI robots, and they said, how do we get world peace? And the robots thought for a bit, exchanged ideas, and came back with their answer. And the answer was, the first thing we do is get rid of all the humans.
No.
And they powered off the robots.
No, really?
According to this article that I read. And I can't even remember.
Yeah.
So it could be some basement dweller making a sci-fi thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I went,
All right, Gil. So in the biz for a while, directed, produced, acted, radio, television, music videos. What's your favorite medium? What's your favorite genre of film to make? Kind of what gets your eggs boiling?
Favorite medium? If I have to pick one, it'll be live theater.
Live theater, eh?
Okay. Yeah. But for different aspects, TV, film, and theater are kind of all on the same tier for me, but for different reasons, because you can do different things with. But I would say, there's a big chunk of my heart left in live theater. Nothing replaces that intimacy.
I see, yeah.
Favorite genre? Social drama. Social drama for sure. Historical drama. Those would be my top 2, I would think.
Gotcha. Favorite director of all time?
Oh, no, that's impossible. Too many. Spielberg, Scorsese, Ridley Scott, Ron Howard. I mean, I could just... Everybody's got something that I like.
Yeah.
Ford, Houston, go way back, Capra. I don't have a favorite.
What about actor?
No, same thing.
Same thing?
I like some people that other people don't like because I like individual pieces of work.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan of Mel Gibson, even though he's had a fall from grace. Some of his work was timely and quite good in its era. But I go way back. Jimmy Stewart, Bogart. With my students, I would always say, I can't work with you if you haven't seen Casablanca.
Oh, well, yeah, hey.
Yeah. Because that is the foundation for the 3-act drama that since then, all feature films are loosely based on that format, right?
Yeah.
But Bogart had a way, Cagney had a way, Orson Welles had things. So I get asked that a lot. I can't pick a favorite.
Yeah. No, it's all good. One thing that I've heard you talk about in the past is the education aspect of what's available for people out there in the film industry. Are you able to comment on that, or just break down what your thoughts are on kind of how you feel, I guess, the access to information?
We live in the information age, so there's information at your fingertips, in your phone. Okay, you can educate yourself with your phone, but we have wonderful schools all over the place. Post-secondary institutions all over, and with a lot of great programs. So, for someone to not bother learning the basics For someone to not bother going to chapters and picking up a book and saying, I want to jump in with absolutely no foundation whatsoever, to me is insane. It's absolutely insane. I wouldn't do it. You know, it's like me saying to you, I can remove your appendix because I saw a YouTube video and I've got a knife. Yeah. And it's true. I could remove your appendix. I don't know if you're going to live, but I can remove your appendix. You know, you want a real doctor. You want to know that they were at the top of their class.
Yeah.
But the argument would be, well, but they were top of their class. That doesn't mean they're any good. They got to learn on the job. Yes, but that's part of the process. You have the foundation. Are you going to build a house on sand, or are you going to build it on concrete?
Yeah.
So, you know, people just waking up one day and saying, well, I'm going to do X. Well, that's fine, but take the correct path to get to X.
Yeah.
Don't think you can leapfrog. And we're in an era where so many people think they can leapfrog over things. So, and really people in the industry don't respect you if you haven't paid your dues. They don't respect you if you don't have some training. You know, if you walk in off the street and say, well, I wrote my first feature film. Oh, well, what'd you write before that? Nothing.
Yeah.
You didn't write even a letter to your mom? Nope. Sat down, wrote a script. Here it is. No one's going to buy that, you know?
Yeah.
No one's even going to believe that. Somehow you had to learn formatting and you had to learn a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I cannot overemphasize that you've got to get some kind of training. And self-education is great, but at least seek out a mentor. At least consult. You know, look at the old guard. Look at the people that have had 30 years experience and say, listen, can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain? A woman here in our city who is a director, she was directing, you know, and I get a call from her. She said, can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'll buy you lunch, whatever. I just want to pick your brain. You know, and she did that 3 times. And I said, why are you doing this? And she goes, I need to become a better director. I need to explore other people's visions and so on because I want to improve. And I was like, wow, that's great. I ended up giving her a bunch of books on directing.
Yeah.
And she could have simply said, I don't need any more education. I don't need to learn. I've already directed some things.
Yeah.
You know? But I encourage people to do that.
Maybe we already touched on this earlier, but are you able to share any practical tips or words of encouragement from Gil Allan?
Words of encouragement. Okay. Which is different than advice. Here's what I really believe. We are on the cusp of something. I have no idea what it is. Things are changing. You need to be open. These new producers coming into everybody needs to be open to what's the next thing? What's our evolution? How do I fit in? Because I think that this is a time of some kind of opportunity, right? When the Nickelodeons started, you know, nobody'd ever even heard of that. These guys are going to go across the country with these machines and whatever. And it was very successful. And it was a step in the evolution of the film exhibition game. Might have seemed crazy at the time to a lot of people, but it was an important thing and an important development. Something's out there, you know? So look for the opportunities, create the opportunities. There's going to be new formats that might do some change. I was a music video pioneer, certainly here in the local scene, right? Many people that you talk to about those days, people that were involved in the 80s on music video, would say, oh, we were people of great vision and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were figuring it out and making it up and change. We knew the rules and we were changing the rules, but we didn't know what the results were going to be until after we did it. And now experts look back and go, those guys messed around with those music videos and created that whole genre. Well, they changed television. We did impact the way television is seen and done today because of those music videos. Mm-hmm. Now, I think that we're on the same kind of development right now with all the new media and streaming and whatever's going to come of it. Somehow, that cream is going to rise to the surface. So keep an open mind. Learn the history, practice the history, but keep an open mind and move forward.
If you could give yourself, your younger self, a piece of advice, or, looking back now, what would you say to your younger self when first getting started in this in the industry?
Become a welder. Always wanted to try that. Never did.
To actually become a welder. Okay. I'm just like, is there some kind of metaphoric meaning to that?
Nope. Also,
become a welder.
There's good money in it and probably a lot less headaches. I wish I had taken some things more seriously. I wish I had sought more mentors at certain times in my young life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I missed some opportunities because I didn't have the foresight to go. That's a really good move for me.
Yeah.
I'm not unhappy. I don't have huge regrets. I have small regrets. Advice I would give to anybody who in the biz right now on this would be take more risks.
Okay.
Because what the business does is drive you into being safe for economic return.
Okay.
Right? So artistically, you don't take the risks you should take. And that's one of the issues I have with the current scene coming out of Hollywood is, well, this franchise has made us a lot of money. We got to duplicate that. Take a risk, man. Blow it.
Okay.
You'll bounce back. Take a risk. When I'm dealing with people that are in the schools, I always say, take all the risks you can in the classroom. Because when you get out there, you're not going to be allowed to take those risks.
Fair enough.
Because we're so scared of not making the money, right? So as an actor, take the crazy risk, but do it in the classroom.
Yeah.
For at least for now. But I think we should be taking more risks in the art.
Gil, thank you so much for spending time with us today here on Frame by Frame. Really enjoyed our conversation today. Very insightful. And again, very inspirational words coming from you. For me as an inspiring filmmaker, you really do give me inspiration to keep going and keep moving in this industry. So again, thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Jared. It was a good time and look forward to some more future things.
For sure. Awesome. So guys, if you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Frame by Frame, and don't forget to leave us a review. You can follow Gil's work on, where can people find you, Gil? IMDb?
IMDb or at my website, which is gilbert-allan.com.
And there you guys go. Thanks for tuning in on Frame by Frame. We'll see you guys on the next episode.